My name is Morgan, I'm 35 years old, and what I'm about to share with you is not just a story. It's a lesson written in pain, silence, and poetic revenge. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, like, and share the story with your friends, because trust me, you're about to go on a journey you won't forget. The day my son called me a disgrace was the day something inside me quietly broke, not with anger, but with clarity. The sun had already begun to dip behind the high walls of our old family house, painting long golden lines across the marble floor. I stood in the foyer, clutching the envelope that would change everything. My heart pounded slowly, not with fear, but with the kind of calm that comes when you already know what must be done. He was standing there, Ethan, my son, tall, handsome, every inch of him polished by privilege. My privilege. His suit, his watch, even the air of entitlement he carried, all built from the life I had sacrificed to give him. And yet, as he looked at me that evening, there wasn't an ounce of warmth in his eyes. "You shouldn't have come," he said coldly, his jaw tightening. "You're not welcome here." I froze for half a second. The weight of his words settled like stones in my chest. Behind him, my ex-husband, Richard, leaned casually against the staircase railing, his lips twitching into that smug little smirk I had once mistaken for charm. Ethan took a step forward. "You can only—" He paused, motioning with his hand toward the servant standing by the door. "Talk to him if you need something." That was when I realized my own son had relegated me to the level of household staff. I smiled. Just slightly. Not because it didn't hurt, but because that moment confirmed what I had suspected for months. They had finally underestimated me completely. "You look good, Ethan," I said quietly. "Success suits you." He scoffed, turning away. "Spare me the guilt trip, Mom. You made your choices. Don't come here pretending like you're part of this family again." Richard folded his arms, the perfect picture of arrogance. "Morgan, let's not make this dramatic. You left, remember? You signed everything away years ago. You wanted peace. You got it." "Yes," I murmured, my voice low but steady. "Peace and patience." Their laughter echoed softly through the hall, the kind of laugh that men share when they believe they've already won. That's when I nodded to the man beside me, Mr. Lewis, my lawyer. A quiet, unassuming man with glasses and a briefcase that looked far too ordinary for what it contained. He stepped forward and handed me a folder. My fingers brushed the smooth paper, thick, embossed, official. I could feel Richard's gaze narrowing. "What's that?" he asked. I met his eyes. Closure. Then I turned to Ethan, my son, the boy I had once rocked to sleep on nights when his father was too busy chasing deals and mistresses. "It's time," I said simply. Mr. Lewis opened the folder, revealing the documents that would make the entire room spin. Richard straightened up, suddenly uneasy. Ethan frowned, his confidence flickering. "What the hell is this, Morgan?" Richard demanded. "Everything," I said softly. "Everything you thought you buried. You don't realize how fragile love is until you watch it decay inside your own home." Years ago, this same family house used to echo with laughter. Ethan was 10 then, all messy hair and endless curiosity. Richard would come home late from the firm, loosen his tie, and kiss me on the cheek like he still meant it. I used to believe we were unstoppable, a picture-perfect family framed in golden light. But love doesn't vanish overnight. It bleeds out slowly, through late-night arguments whispered in hallways, half-truths buried in text messages, and the quiet way someone stops looking at you during breakfast. Richard's betrayal came softly, at first. Missed dinners. Urgent meetings. A scent on his shirt that wasn't mine. I didn't need to hire anyone. My intuition was sharper than any detective. One night, after he'd fallen asleep, I went through his phone. I remember my hands trembling as I scrolled through messages filled with words that used to belong to me. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you. You make me feel alive again." Her name was Elena, his assistant. That night, I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the city lights outside the window, and I promised myself something. I would not cry. Not yet. Because women like me, we don't fall apart. We strategize. When I confronted him, he didn't even bother denying it. He just sighed, as if I were the inconvenience. "Don't make this ugly, Morgan," he said. "You're better than that." Better than what, Richard? Better than heartbreak? Better than humiliation? He moved out a month later, into a luxury apartment conveniently close to the office. He told Ethan it was a temporary separation, that Mommy was stressed. And Ethan, my sweet boy, believed him. At first, I tried to keep things civil. I refused to let anger make me bitter, not for my son's sake. But slowly, Richard began poisoning Ethan's mind. Subtle at first, little comments about how I wasn't handling things well, how maybe it's better if you stay with Dad this weekend. Then came the court papers. I wasn't surprised. Richard was a lawyer. Manipulation was his second language. He used every trick in the book, painting me as unstable, emotional, and unfit for full custody. His money, his influence, his charm, all weaponized against me. The day I lost custody of Ethan, I didn't even cry in court. I just sat there, perfectly still, watching Richard smirk across the table as the judge announced his victory. But when I got home, when the silence hit, I crumbled. It wasn't losing Richard that broke me. It was losing the little boy who used to call me his hero. After that, I disappeared from their world. I needed time to heal, to rebuild, and to learn how the system that failed me really worked. I took jobs that taught me how contracts are written, how assets are hidden, how companies shelter wealth. I studied everything, quietly. I waited. 4 years, I let them live in their illusion. Richard and Elena got married, and Ethan grew up believing his father's version of the story. They bought the family house from me for far less than it was worth. I let them. They thought it was a victory. But what they didn't know was that while they were busy flaunting their wealth, I was busy building mine, carefully, silently. I invested in property. I started a small design business. Within 6 years, it became a brand. My name was never attached to the company publicly. I used a trust, just like Richard had taught me, unknowingly arming me with his own tactics. By the time I was 35, I had something far more powerful than money. I had knowledge, and I had leverage. Then came the scandal, a whisper in the legal community that Richard's firm had been using unethical client accounts. At first, I ignored it, until I saw the documents. And that's when I realized, destiny had just handed me the weapon I'd been waiting for. That's when I called Mr. Lewis, an old colleague I trusted completely. "Are you ready to end this?" I asked him over the phone. He didn't even hesitate. "Tell me what you need." I told him everything, every lie, every hidden account, every asset Richard had tucked away under false names. Mr. Lewis went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Morgan, if what you're saying is true, this could destroy him." I smiled. That's the point. When Mr. Lewis opened the folder, the room smelled suddenly of paper and old money, an odd, almost metallic scent that made the air feel heavier. He didn't make a show of it. He passed the first document to me so I could confirm what it said out loud. The handwriting, the stamps, the signatures, familiar patterns I'd learned to read like maps. "This is a shell company ledger," I said, my voice calm. "It ties Richard's firm to several client accounts that were never disclosed. It shows transfers, invoices paid to companies that don't exist, and director names that, if you follow them, lead back to properties registered in my name years ago, properties I was told we'd sold." Richard sank into the nearest chair as if an invisible hand had pushed him. Elena's face drained of color. Ethan's smile wavered as he scanned the page I held. "You can't be serious," he said at first, disbelief thick in his voice. "This is fabricated." Mr. Lewis tapped a stamped, printed email from an offshore registry. "We have confirmations," he said. I had an independent forensic accountant run initial checks. "This is not invented. These are copies of invoices, IP logs, bank confirmations. Every line item has a trail." "Why would you do this?" Elena asked, reaching for the defensiveness of someone who's never had to explain facts to a courtroom. "Richard does legitimate work. And he hides the rest. I finished for her. He hid assets. He hid income. He hid our son's inheritance under layers of corporate names so it could be used however he pleased. He used our life for power, not for us. And when I asked about it, I was branded irrational." Ethan had gone quiet. He read a page, then another, his expression folding inward like paper being creased. "You bought the house from me for a pittance," I said, the words small but deliberate. "You told people it was fair market, but the records show otherwise. You claimed settlements and mortgage credits that never existed. The home you live in, this house, was not obtained through transparent means. It was obtained through manipulation." "Lies," Richard spat, then paused, because the word no longer fit so easily. He glanced at the others, seeking refuge in shared disbelief, and finding only thin air. My voice didn't rise. It never does when I want people to listen. Anger is the noise that makes them defensive. Calm is the hammer that breaks down doors. I've given these documents to a regulator. I've filed an injunction to force a review of the firm's client accounts. This is not revenge for the sake of spectacle. It is an accounting of truth. You built a house on deception. It's time to see the foundation." Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. He kept reading. He mouthed something, an apology, to no one, and then looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in years. "You used to come into my room at night and tuck the blanket," he said, voice small. "You made paper boats with me when the river flooded. Why would you do this now?" "Because it matters. Because you used my hands to raise you and then used my absence to justify taking everything. You asked me to be a monster," I said. "But I never was. I just spent years learning how to make the world answer when it's asked to. I learned how to follow paper, how to read ledgers, how to make hiding places visible." Silence crept into the corners of the room. Aunt Marge, who'd come because she thought family dinners were sacrosanct, had tears in her eyes. The neighbor who'd once complimented the house's roses looked suddenly like an arbiter, not a friend. Richard's skin had lost its confident hue. He pressed his fingers to his temple as if trying to will the knowledge away. "You're threatening my career," he hissed finally. "You'll bankrupt me." "I never wanted your career," I said. "I wanted my life back. I wanted my son to see the truth before it's too late." Ethan's face collapsed into something that was neither anger nor forgiveness. It was dizziness, the sick sensation of discovering a familiar map had been redrawn without your consent. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping like a voice rising too loud. "How could you?" he demanded, but there was no force behind it now. It sounded like the echo of a rehearsed line. He stared at Richard. "Is this true?" Richard's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He reached out, a grasp for a hand that would steady him. "Son, you don't understand. There are complexities. You put our name on things without our permission," I said. "You used the narrative of our family as currency. When I asked questions, you called me unstable." Ethan's eyes flicked between his parents and then landed back on me. The warmth I craved wasn't there yet, but something else was, curiosity. Betrayal turns into curiosity first, and only later does it become judgment. "You sold Mom's shares?" he asked finally, incredulous. "Yes," Richard said, words cold. "We all made choices." Mr. Lewis had already anticipated this. He produced another sheet, an annotated bank transfer trail, and pointed to entries where accounts linked to the firm had disbursed funds to entities controlled by people who benefited from property purchases. "Your father signed paperwork that set up these trusts," Mr. Lewis said gently. "He did it in a way that removed public names. But the trail exists. We followed it. We can prove it." Ethan sagged, the weight of comprehension settling on his shoulders. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice raw. "Why did you let her go?" "Because sometimes, the only way to make people see is to hand them documents they can't ignore." At that, Ethan looked at both of us, then at the framed family photo hanging on the wall, the one where I stood with a braid gone wrong and Richard smiling like he'd just closed a big deal. The people in the photograph looked staged, as if taken by a director who knew the scene's end. "You did this to protect me," he said at last, his voice trembling between accusation and gratitude. "You thought." "I did this to protect our truth," I corrected, "and to stop them from using your life as a ledger item." The expression on Richard's face finally fell away. The smugness that had propped him, like a chair under a tired man, crumbled. For the first time in years, I saw fear fully play across his features. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but it sounded hollow even to his ears. "We'll see," I said. "But regret and consequence are not the same. I don't want to destroy lives. I want accountability. And if accountability reorders wealth and status, then so be it." Ethan sank into a chair. He stared at the documents as if they were a foreign language he'd been expected to fluently read his entire life and now suddenly couldn't. "You could have come to me," he said, voice breaking. "You could have asked me. Instead, you made me decide. You had a choice every day. Your choice was to see or not to see," I said. "I made a different choice. I learned. I waited. I acted." There was a long pause, a moment pregnant with the possibilities of what might follow. In that silence, everyone in the room understood something ancient. The comfortable arrangement of power had shifted. The rules had changed. Mr. Lewis closed his folder with a soft click that sounded like a gavel. He stood. "If anyone wants to contest these documents, they're free to do so. I'll expect cooperation. For now, you'll want to contact counsel and prepare statements. The regulator will be in touch." Richard looked at me, not with anger now, but with a pleading that made my eyes sting. "Morgan," he said, "there's still a way." "No," I interrupted gently. "There's only a truth, and the truth has to be lived with." Ethan's shoulders shook. He reached for my hand, awkward, hesitant, like a child learning to ride a bike and asking your hand at the exact instant you realize the cycle will go without training wheels. I took it. In his grip, I felt the last years of my quiet work condense into a single, scorching moment. The exact instant justice, small and scrupulous, began to make a new home in the place justice had been denied. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. Not the cold, empty kind, but the kind that hides a rising sun behind it. By Monday morning, the first calls came in. The regulatory board had officially launched an inquiry into Richard's firm. News spread fast. A partner at a prestigious law firm being accused of financial misconduct? That was headline material. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth finally standing in daylight, no longer whispered behind closed doors. I stayed quiet. My lawyer, Mr. Lewis, handled the noise, reporters, investigators, and the predictable spin Richard's firm tried to publish to save face. They called it a clerical error. But the documents didn't lie, and neither did the years of silence they'd forced me into. For once, silence worked for me. Ethan didn't call for almost a week. I didn't blame him. He had been raised between two narratives, his father's confidence and my quiet absence. Now, both stories had cracked open. When his name finally appeared on my phone, I took a deep breath before answering. "Mom." Just that one word. Unsteady. Young, even though he was 21 now. "I'm here." I said softly. I don't know what to think, he said. Everything feels false. Everything I thought I knew. That's what happens when truth finally arrives, I told him. It doesn't come gently. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Can we talk? Just us. Always." We met at the old cafe by the riverside, the same one where I used to take him after school for pancakes. He looked older, worn out, eyes red from sleepless nights. For a few minutes, we didn't speak. The hum of people around us filled the silence. Finally, he looked at me. "Dad says you've ruined everything." I nodded. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped pretending everything was fine. He looked away. He was wrong to lie. I see that now. But he's still my dad. I know, I said. And you don't have to choose. You just have to see clearly. That's all I ever wanted. His lips pressed together, trembling slightly. I said terrible things to you. Yes, I said, not to wound him but to honor the truth. I didn't know what to believe, he whispered. I thought you were bitter, that you hated him. I did hate him, I admitted. For a while. But hate is heavy, Ethan. You can't carry it forever. It breaks your back before it breaks your enemy. He looked at me then, really looked, the way he used to when he was little and scared of the dark. I want to make this right, he said. For you. For me. You already are, I said. In the following months, Richard's firm went through an audit. The world didn't explode. It rarely does when truth comes out. Instead, things quietly rearranged themselves. Clients left. His partners distanced themselves. He lost his position. Then, for the first time in 20 years, he called me. I suppose congratulations are in order, he said bitterly. No, I said. It's not a victory, Richard. It's a correction. He sighed. I guess you're happy now? I thought for a long moment before answering. No. But I'm free. Freedom didn't look like triumph. It looked like peace, mornings with coffee by the window, no longer flinching when my phone rang, no longer waiting for apologies that never came. Ethan started visiting me again. Sometimes we'd talk about everything that happened. Sometimes we didn't. We'd cook, laugh awkwardly, and rebuild, not the same bond, but a new one. He began volunteering at a legal aid center, helping people who couldn't afford representation. He said he wanted to make things right in his own way. Watching him do that, seeing him use the pain as fuel for something better, was the real victory. One evening, as the sun set across the horizon, Ethan turned to me and said, "Do you ever wish it hadn't happened?" I smiled faintly. Sometimes. But if it hadn't, I'd still be living in a lie. Sometimes destruction clears the ground for something honest. He nodded slowly. You really did it, Mom. You faced him. I didn't face him, I said. I faced myself, the part of me that kept forgiving what wasn't right. He smiled then, the first real smile in years. That was the moment I knew the story was over, not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped needing to. Justice isn't revenge. It's the return of balance. And when balance returns, you don't celebrate with noise. You simply breathe, deeply, freely, knowing that this time, peace is yours to keep.